Hey there guys, Kieran here with another review from Scene to Screen, the podcast that talks about movies, TV shows and pretty much all aspects of pop culture. As you'll know because you saw the title, you clicked on it, you're here, this is my full spoiler-free review of A Quiet Place, which is the brand new horror film from director John Krasinski. For those of you that might not know too much about A Quiet Place, it's a horror film where most of the people on Earth have been killed by this mysterious alien race. They can't see you, but they hunt you through sound, so if you make any kind of noise, they'll be there within a minute and you'll probably be dead. The story follows this family. You've got John Krasinski as the father, and then his real-life wife, Emily Blunt, plays the mother, and then you've got these two kids played by Millicent Simmons and Noah Jupe, and this film basically follows this family as they try to survive by making literally as little noise as humanly possible. I tried it for like a minute before I started recording, and I failed instantly. I would be dead so fast in this world. Okay, so getting into the review, the first thing I want to talk about is the direction, because John Krasinski is obviously known more as an actor than a director, so I wasn't really sure what to expect from him as a director. With that said, walking out of the film, I couldn't help but be excited about this guy as a filmmaker. A Quiet Place is one of the most impressive displays of direction I've seen in a really long time, and I'm not even a fan of horror movies. I'm not one of these guys that seeks out the feeling of fear. It's not a nice feeling, so I try to avoid it as much as possible. But Krasinski directed the film so that the horror aspect came second to the characters. One of the most exciting things about A Quiet Place is that instead of being your typical kind of horror movie that focuses more on jump scares than telling an interesting story, it makes you care about the characters. Even when they do something really stupid, you connect with them and you want them to be safe, and all of that is because John Krasinski understands how to create interesting characters and tell an engaging story. This guy also really knows how to supply the audience with information. One of my least favourite things about films today is that they tell you way too much. They throw all this exposition at you and give you a big explainer at the beginning, and that takes away a lot of the mystery and the intrigue, but there's none of that crap in this film. Don't get me wrong, Krasinski leaves a few clues lying around, and you can kind of figure out certain details about the creatures, but there's never a point in the film where we as an audience know more about what these creatures are and where they came from than the characters themselves, and I absolutely loved that about this movie. Obviously, with a film that follows a family that needs to stay as silent as possible, sound itself is a major character in this film, and the sound design here is insanely good. The way Krasinski uses sound is wonderful, and the fact that this film can go for multiple scenes without any kind of spoken dialogue and still keep the audience on the edge of their seats is really remarkable. When I saw the film, I was with quite a big audience, so when it first started, I was a little bit worried that they'd be louder than the film itself, with popcorn and drinks and all that kind of stuff. But this really weird thing happened where the audience kind of understood that this was going to be a really quiet film, and they just didn't make a sound. It was like everyone was trying to see if they would survive the film. The guy behind me literally put his popcorn away after like 5 minutes because he was afraid to make any noise in the cinema. It was a really weird but really cool experience that I doubt I'll ever have again. Going into the cinema, I'll admit that I was a little bit worried about the cast. Obviously, I knew that Emily Blunt and John Krasinski could hold their own as actors, but from the trailers, I knew that certain scenes would demand a lot from these younger actors, and child actors can make or break a movie, but thankfully both of these kids are phenomenal in every single scene, and they just really sold some of the darkest and scariest moments in the entire film. Krasinski is at his very best here, and he really gets down to the heart of his character, but I've got to say that Emily Blunt completely steals the show and gives such a surprising and powerful performance. As for the horror in the film, I was really surprised by how much I actually enjoyed some of the scarier moments. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of horror, but I think Krasinski did a good job of making the horror feel different. It never felt like he was tricking you with jump scares and all that kind of stuff all the time. It It felt like a really smart style of horror, and instead of jumping out at you, the film just has this intensity and this terrifying force that looms over the entire movie and lives within every quiet moment. Of course, there were moments where stuff did jump out at you, and I'm sure my cinema seat still has holes where my nails went, but the film earned those moments. They didn't feel cheap or unnecessary. So yeah, I found myself really enjoying the scary moments in the film as well, which is something that I never thought I'd be saying. Now, if you've heard any of my previous reviews, you'll know that I generally try to stay positive, but no film is perfect, and A Quiet Place isn't the exception. It did come pretty close though. Probably my biggest issue with the film was the score. Some of you might know that I'm a massive fan of movie scores and soundtracks, and there are certain tracks in this score that really work for the film, especially in the more emotional moments. For the most part though, I think the score kind of got in the way of the movie and distracted from some of the incredible sound work that Krasinski was doing. Certain scenes would have really benefited from remaining silent instead of being overpowered by the score, but that's pretty much my only issue with A Quiet Place. Like I said, I really enjoyed this movie, and I'd probably say that it's one of the most surprising, creative, emotional, and terrifying films that I've seen in a very, very long time. I was glued to my seat from beginning to end, afraid to make a sound or even breathe too loudly, and because of that, I'm giving A Quiet Place a really strong 9 out of 10. I definitely recommend this movie, but be warned, if you want to take a nice snack to eat with the film, maybe take something a little quieter, maybe something soft like a marshmallow. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to Scene to Screen and like this review. You can check us out on iTunes, Soundcloud, YouTube and Stitcher, so make sure you find us on your favourite platform and subscribe. Before you go though, let us know what you thought of A Quiet Place in the comments section below, and hopefully I'll see you in the next episode.